Covering Huntsville, Hartselle, Guntersville. You're watching WZDX News first at 9.
Just after taking his first step on the moon, astronaut Neil Armstrong said that's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind.
We fast forward nearly 5 decades later, and NASA is now working on its next mission for the history books, a journey to the red planet.
All eyes are on the Rocket City once again to help make that next giant leap for mankind, humans stepping foot on Mars in the year 2030. Nearly 9,000 workers in North Alabama are putting everything they've got into an out-of-this-world adventure, NASA's mission to Mars.
They're a part of that next step, the journey to Mars, building the rocket here that will take us. This is a capability we don't have, and they are on the pointy end of that spear of understanding that work.
The journey consists of 1,100 companies, including dozens right here in North Alabama. Each carry key responsibilities essential to NASA's success, starting with a space-to-launch system.
The SLS rocket in general is a history maker with its size and its capability and its use and adaptability to other configurations way on into the future. So this test is the first piece to that puzzle.
The Marshall Space Flight Center manages multiple aspects of the SLS, including the logistics and the budget.
But we also rely on the expertise we have here.
And that expertise includes structural testing. Workers simulate what the rocket will likely encounter in deep space.
So we are simulating the flight event. Every conceivable force you could have on the rocket during flight, we mimic here on the ground.
NASA engineers use this test stand to push the limits of the upper stage of the Space Launch System, which is the most powerful and largest rocket ever developed.
And we want to over-test in case there's any errors in what we expect to see or errors in terms of our modeling of the hardware, that if we got anything wrong by a little bit, we're still going to be okay.
And once that rocket flies, Huntsville workers can say
our fingerprints will literally be on the top of the rocket, from the interim cryogenic propulsion stage to the adapters that connect that stage to the massive core stage of the rocket. That's being built right here in our backyard.
But beyond undertaking the heavy task of building the rocket and getting to space, workers must juggle additional challenges such as keeping astronauts safe, supplying the mission, and sustaining political will.
Overall, there is strong bipartisan support for NASA. So we're very thankful for that. We've been working on that for years to try to get to this particular point.
Funding for NASA is a key component to success, and President Donald Trump's latest $19 billion funding bill, the first in 7 years, is helping.
We're going to continue to make sure that our legislators and our senators, that they have all the information at their fingertips to support the work that we do for NASA.
Rocket City workers also get to help select the next generation of astronauts, narrowing down the pool of applicants from 18,500 to 50.
So out of those 50 candidates, we're going to probably have anywhere from 10 to 15. It is a great team of folks that are waiting to take on a journey to Mars.
If NASA's mission to Mars is a success, the next generation or two could be living what many of us dream of, putting on a spacesuit and visiting space. NASA workers tell me that reality is a matter of time as NASA works towards its mission to the red planet.
The most exciting thing that keeps me excited every day is to know the things that we don't know, the unknown. Again, the things that we don't know in space should really excite our next generation to apply themselves.
And when I asked why Mars, workers told me Mars could unlock many secrets of space. They say after Earth, Mars is the most habitable planet in our solar system, and its soil contains water to extract. The red planet also isn't too hot or too cold, and gravity on Mars is 38% of that of our Earth's, so humans are more likely to adapt to it. They know that they are making history day by day, working up to this, and in the next few generations, they're going to look back and say, I was a part of that when man eventually gets to walk on Mars, so that's going to be amazing.
Covering Huntsville, Decatur, Florence. You're watching WZDX News first at 9.
Welcome back. Well, we all know teenagers can be pretty secretive, especially through technology and social media.
Now, many teens are taking this to a whole new level. They're engaging in sexually charged conversations and even sharing naked photos. This sort of social media sexting could even land them in jail.
I talked to a local prosecutor who says it's not the first time it's happened right here in the Valley, and it won't be the last. But many Valley parents I talked to don't have a clue how easy it is for teens to be promiscuous. Code lingo and sex apps are hot topics for teenagers these days. Just ask a few candid teens and you'll crack their codes. Everybody uses the apps and the code lingo. Is that right?
Everybody uses them. I mean, Most people, they try not to, but it's a force of habit to use them.
These teens tell me mom and dad would be amazed to find out what they're really saying via text.
Well, I mean, we use it every day. We use it most of the time when you're like by yourself, like with you and your friends, and your parents walk up, and you just switch straight to code lingo.
Now, in case you're not familiar with what code lingo looks like, it looks a lot like acronyms. As you can see, ASL, age, sex, location, WTTP, want to trade pictures, and MOS, mom over shoulder.
If your child is texting banana, MOS, if they can't explain it to you and it's still odd and your gut's like, this is weird, keep looking.
Prosecutor Gabby Helix says most teens don't realize their behavior may cost them their freedom.
If you do anything in secret, let's just consider it not good.
She urges parents to investigate beyond the surface to make sure teens are not possessing or distributing porn.
You know, what is love? What is true love? What is appropriate? What's not appropriate?
Helix says it all starts with an open dialogue.
They've had sex, but they don't know the names of their private parts. And so if you can't name it, you can't protect it.
Clay Coleman has a teenage stepdaughter. He says he's surprised to find a few apps look familiar.
These are very shocking. I'm going to go get her phone tonight, I think, again.
Do you look at her phone often?
Yeah, when we first initially went, there was a lot of stuff that, you see these kids, they talk and the language and different things that they use. Yeah, it's definitely surprising for sure.
Maria Rigi had a similar reaction. The mother of two says she's never heard of these secret tools for teens.
I think it could be a very big trap for them. They're just kind of drawn in and they feel like they're getting attention, and next thing you know, it's the wrong attention and they're in a lot of trouble.
Rigi and other adults tell me they're especially surprised to learn about the secret calculator, an app teens use to hide promiscuity.
It looks like a calculator. The only exception is that it's actually not orange and gray, it's black and blue.
While the news is startling to the typical parent, Helix says it's definitely happening here in the Valley.
Kids nowadays tend to be behind a screen, and they develop these false sort of relationships, and they think this is wonderful, and they don't know who's on the other side. And who's on the other side could be a predator.
Helix also warns teens, worst case scenario, they may not always be talking to who they think they are.
They try to get to these kids who are lonely, and they try to make them feel loved. And the next thing you know, your child is either receiving pornography or they're sneaking out in the middle of the night to go meet these people. And if you don't think it happens in Huntsville, in Madison County, in North Alabama, you're a fool.
And what's worse, Helix believes the creators of these apps may be using sexual photos for porn.
So now we're creating more of a supply, and the demand is endless.
Now, the good news is there are signs and resources right here in the Tennessee Valley. And for those of you who'd like to crack teen secret code lingo, we've got a full list on our website. Just check out rocketcitynow.com and look for this story. There you can also find a list of apps to watch for and other key signs of behavior you don't want to overlook. If you feel like you're missing out when you look at social media, you're not alone. I spoke to a local counselor who tells me the more we swipe, tap, and send, the more we want to. And for many of us, especially the younger crowd, that can add up to digital depression. Chelsea and Hannah are like most teenage girls. They take lots of selfies and share them on every cool social media site out there. Some days they love it, some days they don't.
I compare everything. So, I'll look at a picture of, if I went on your Facebook, I'm like, oh, I like her hair, or I wish my hair looked like that. I wish my makeup looked like that. I wish I had that dress.
But even online popularity doesn't promise positivity. The girls tell me likes and followers don't deter the bullies.
They'll make pages like for the county and put all the girls that they don't like or they think
or like girls'
get around
nudes or something, school district whores or just stuff like that.
Digital bullying is still rampant. More than half of teens say they've been bullied via text or online.
I remember times when whatever people say, even not on social media, it really affects you, and the fact that everybody else can read it and see it, it's even worse.
But can you escape it? Many tell me they don't even feel like they exist without an account.
Like if someone tells me like I don't have Instagram, I think that's a little weird.
Teenage boys are not immune to digital depression. They tell me the fear of missing out can sometimes take a toll on teen self-esteems.
I see like my friends doing stuff, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have came or invited.
I feel like there's pressure for me to like put the picture that looks good versus just whatever picture.
Eating disorders and plastic surgery rates are also up, fueled by social media.
People choose to share the most perfect moments. Here's what I look like this night when I'm going on a date, or but they don't choose to show the sad, hard moments of life, which are more numerous than the perfect ones.
Tennessee Valley counselors tell me body dysmorphic disorder is a real problem, and our culture's extreme emphasis on social media is bringing clients in with self-image concerns.
There's actually a chemical thing going on here when we check our phones that reinforces our tendency to check our phones. So it becomes this kind of cycle that can end up making us much less happy.
Dr. Barnhart tells me it's very important that we stay more in touch with objective reality than digital fantasy.
If we don't do that, then we tend to repeat the same pattern over and over again because we're not stopping and being reflective on what's causing the emotions to be what they are.
Dr. Barnhart wants you to ponder, perhaps write down your thoughts and openly discuss your feelings to those who've been there.
Your value does not depend on how many likes you get on a Facebook picture or on an Instagram picture. When you grow up in the real world, it's all about who you are as a person.
I think sometimes social media can kind of distort what reality is. And I think children especially are vulnerable to that.
Somebody might choose to have this perfect profile and then underneath they're suffering.
So if we're feeling a dabble of digital depression, let's not pretend to be happy or convince others we are before we choose to be beyond our smiles on social media.
Get away from the media and maybe closer to the social.
Dr. Barnhart often asks his patients, if you had just 1 year left to live, how would you spend it? Not too many people would say on social media, so it's a great reminder of what's truly important. When we think of teachers, we think of trustworthy people who are helping children learn values and education. But tonight we talk about teachers that abuse their authority and develop a sexual relationship with a student. You see it happening across the nation, across the state, and even across the Tennessee Valley. Educators, teachers, parents, prosecutors, and psychologists tell me they're doing their best to stop it. In the course of one school year, 20 teachers across the state of Alabama have been charged with having a sexual relationship with a student. It's happened in public, private, and religious schools, both men and women with a wide range in age. Each are loved and admired by many in their communities, holding prominent and powerful positions. And North Alabama is not immune to this problem.
People who commit these crimes are generally loved by those around them. And that's what's so scary about it.
Prosecutor Gabby Helix says there are plenty of red flags in children, such as secrecy and bedwetting, as well as texting and friending their perpetrator on Facebook. While Helix applauds parents for teaching stranger danger, she urges more candid discussions.
Teaching our kids the names of our body parts, what they're for, who is allowed to touch, I think that's key to empowering even a very young child.
And the executive director here at the National Children's Advocacy Center agrees to an open dialogue, saying communication is a major solution. Yet not a lot of people are willing to talk about this.
How scary is it for a kid to talk about sexual abuse when they've never heard anybody ever talk about it? They don't even maybe have the language about it. But if lots of people are giving messages that it's not okay, that actually creates an opportunity for a child.
Newland says sex predators have no socioeconomic boundaries, which is a great teaching moment for all of us.
What is a greater public health crisis? We have a detection problem, and we have dramatically more people being affected by this.
Superintendent Dr. Tom Sisk tells me he has a zero tolerance policy, citing an extensive annual training program for everyone.
One of the first forms that I developed is a form that we give out that has to do with mandatory reporting of child abuse and sexual misconduct.
Former principal turned Morgan County Schools HR Director Cliff Booth says he encourages school administrators to have a low tolerance of even the least strict of rules.
If you have students hanging out in a teacher's room after school, before school, during prep times, things like that, to me, based on my experience and what I've seen, that's a red flag.
Sex offender therapist Dr. Frankie Preston blames 95% of these cases on porn. He says 93% of young men and 62% of young women under the age of 18 are exposed to unsolicited porn, making it the primary source of sex education for children and adolescents
and that needs to change.
Dr. Preston tells me with technology right at her fingertips, all ages are susceptible of developing an unhealthy and unrealistic psychological illusion, which he calls misinformation of sexuality.
After 30-plus years of studying sex offenders, Dr. Preston believes perpetrators apply for power positions knowing they have sexual inclinations towards children.
Most of them obviously think that they have the power within themselves to control that. However, sex is so powerful that very often that sexual power overrides their ability to prevent that inclination.
Now, Dr. Preston also tells me he can think of a laundry list of questions to ask someone who says they'd like to care for a child. And those questions, in addition to a lengthy background check, may very well help those who hire teachers. To find that list and learn more solutions, just visit the story on our website at rocketcitynow.com.
Putting the Valley first. You're watching WZDX News First at 9.
And welcome back. Accidental gun discharge may be the last thing on your mind when you're buying a gun, but it's a real possibility and a real probability right here in North Alabama. Our Jen Jacobson has this special report. Jen.
Of the top 10 counties leading our nation in deadly shooting accidents, 5 are found right here in North Alabama, with Colbert County, DeKalb County, and Marshall County taking the lead. And as you can see, Calhoun and Madison County are also dealing with a lot of cases. So is this really just a numbers game, or does something need to change? I met with local gun experts to find solutions.
Life changes in an instant for the family of a 17-year-old Decatur High School football player when an accidental gunshot strikes the young man in his head. A similar story for a 13-year-old who took his final breath at a DeKalb County hospital after a relative's gun goes off unexpectedly. And a loaded pistol takes the precious life of a curious 2-year-old boy in Tuscumbia all too quickly. These are stories too painful to recount, too difficult to internalize, and yet too common to ignore.
I can only imagine, how devastating and heart-wrenching that must be.
Lawyer Larry Marsili says he sees cases like these far too often. Marsili believes a change in the law might be necessary, comparing handling a gun to driving a car.
When a teenager turns 16 years old, you don't just give them a driver's license because they've turned 16 years old and they've asked for one. You make sure that they have the ability to safely and appropriately operate that motor vehicle on the roadways before they get the privilege to do so.
Marsili believes a required gun safety course would save lives.
I don't see it as a huge infringement on the Second Amendment to require that there be some sort of training or safety course before somebody's able to legally carry one.
Before you bring a gun into your home, firearm experts recommend that you take a gun safety training course.
Instructor Cameron Boosie believes less than half of gun owners take a gun safety course.
You've got the naysayers. You have some that say it's never going to happen to me. I'm safe with my gun. I know what I'm doing. I don't need an instructor telling me. My daddy taught me how to shoot. I get a lot of that pushback sometimes.
Boosie says community conversation is crucial.
I think more churches need to get involved, more community centers. I think they could do more open dialogue with this.
Boosie says you must treat a gun as if it's loaded, and if you're not using it, lock it up.
It amazes me how we will spend money on nice vacations and nice cars for our kids, but we won't do the basic things to keep them safe. It just astounds me, because in a lot of cases it hasn't happened yet, and it's not important until it happens.
Now, you think with all the gun technology that's available, almost everyone would take advantage of the latest innovation. But gun dealers tell me that's not always the case.
It's just something new that just hit the market less than a year ago.
Local gun dealer J.C. Vaughn says gun safety bullets are one of the best, most affordable products designed to decrease your chances of accidental gun discharge.
What it does, it's got a plastic type bullet in it, and then it's got a live primer in it.
It lock it completely up.
Vaughn says snap caps, trigger locks, and gun vaults are also some of the best safety mechanisms to invest in. You can also purchase a gun that will only go off if your fingerprint is on the trigger.
That's going to run the price of a gun up quite a bit. But how much is child's life worth? That's what it boils down to.
Shooting spike for children under 5 and teens between 15 and 17, evidently happening the most often in homes. To learn more about how you can decrease your chances of losing a loved one to accidental gun discharge or to sign up for a local course, check out the story on our website at rocketcitynow.com.